Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 444. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're honored to have with us the internationally celebrated and acclaimed author and poet, Meghan A. Patricia Wentworth.
Hi, how are you? What a wonderful intro. Thank you so much.
I know. See, it fits. I mean, I was trying to, when I'm interviewing a poet, I had to make that sound. I had to make that flow, and I hope I did. I hope you did. I did well with it.
No, you did a great job.
Yeah. And so this is exciting. So we've actually been talking for about 20 minutes before we even started recording. So about 15 minutes. So there you go. And I realized that we had some gems of conversations that we didn't even get to then. But now, anyway, so everybody's going to miss out on that part. But so now what we're going to do is really jump in, Meghan. So you are a poet. Your latest book, Stay Until Tomorrow, was released on April 4th, correct?
Correct.
Okay, excellent. So before we kind of get into getting the meat of the poetry, talk a little bit about kind of like your background and what kind of led you into poetry.
So I never really been a writer before, like that. Like, I mean, I took like English in high school and stuff. Yeah, so I never really was a big writer prior to starting the book. It just happened like one night in like the summer of 2023. I was having a conversation with a friend, and they had, sort of brought up a lot of like, like your life is so fabulous and so wonderful, and you have all these wonderful accolades and, a gorgeous house. And it sort of started triggering me to kind of push forward with that and be like, just because it looks great on the outside doesn't mean that it's something like that there's not something deeper behind. So I actually woke up one night at like midnight and the words just like came to me, and then I opened up my notes in my phone and I just like voice to texted the poem and then went back to sleep. And then I woke up and I was like, did I just write a poem like in the middle of the night? And I opened it up and I was like, dang girl, like this is really good. So that's sort of how it started. And then I somehow mustered the courage to read that poem in front of like 50 strangers, I think, at like a poetry open mic. And they seemed to really enjoy it. I did get a standing ovation. And so from there, like, I was like, okay. And then, a few weeks later, I wrote another poem, and a few weeks after that, another one. And then in like the fall of that year, I was like, all right, I'm going to be serious about this and like really start like writing actively. And then I finished the book in February of 24. And then I found my publishing house, signed with them in May. And then now the book is out. So like, it seems like a long period of time, but like at the same time, it's like, it all happened like really fast.
Right. And now that you mentioned that first poem, that was This House, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay. Did you want to read to us This House?
Yeah, I can read. Yeah.
Okay.
This was the house of my dreams. Every day I watched it being built from the ground up. Every decision was mine, from the color of the walls to the maple hardwood floors to the placement of every outlet. It was mine, my happiest of places. This is where they brought my son to me, a little boy full of smiles and laughter, where for months and months I watched him grow, where he learned to walk, learned to talk, where I started to feel him slowly slip away, where I had to begin to share him, where my marriage began to crumble, where a house became divided, where I returned in the middle of the night wearing paper panties and paper clothes after the assault that left cracks in my foundation, where after a year they took my son out of my arms with barely any notice, where I began to crumble, where I realized I was broken, where I returned again in paper panties and paper clothes, after deciding a knife to the throat was the only answer to these months of agony and torture. This is where I am left in pieces, scattered across the perfect wooden floors, barely a resemblance of the sturdy foundation poured just a year before. This is where I say goodbye to my happiest of places, where I must begin to build myself from the ground up.
What so what do you say is your themes in general that you explore and stay until tomorrow?
A lot of like love, loss, grief, and then a lot I feel like with like like coming together and closure and just sort of a whole host of emotions. Not a ton of positive emotions. It's all very reflective of, some of the worst days of my life. It's really helped me like come to terms with the things that I've gone through and sort of the hopes of sharing it with others who have also gone through things that maybe, think they're the only one or they don't have an outlet or someone to talk with or just to kind of get the dialogue talking. I feel like a lot of the time with mental health, it's such, like a stigma and that no one really talks about it. But, the more it's in the conversation, the more people can get help.
Mm. And what did you learn about yourself putting this book together?
Um, I feel like it helped me connect a lot of the pieces of myself and sort of look at myself in a different way that, these events happen to me and, they've helped build me to who I am now. And it gave me sort of like self-validation because sometimes like when something happens to you, you kind of push it off. You're like, oh no, but that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. You kind of bury it down. So it's been really nice to kind of unearth those things.
And also to talk to us a little bit about when you compiled this. Was there a certain rhythm? Did you help decide like this poem needs to be next, or is there a reading order for this, or can you
Yeah.
just pick up the book and just go with it?
Yeah, almost the entirety of the book is written exactly how I wrote it.
Okay.
Like, so it's basically one after the other. There's no chronological order. You have some poems that are from when I'm 4 years old to some poems that were like I snuck in like at the last second before print. So, but the only poem I was really specific about is I wanted the poem Grieving in Silence to be first. And then from there, it all just kind of stumbles together. And I tried to make it so that I do a lot of allusions between poems. So I'll use certain phrases and certain words in poems that were prior that kind of tie like poems together. So it's kind of like a little Easter egg hunt.
Hmm. And so talk to us a little bit about too is what's the significance then of the book's title?
I feel like it has a couple things. I always knew that that's what I wanted the title to be. So I feel like it's kind of two handed where like stay until tomorrow to me originally kind of felt like it was like instilled in me as a child. Like if I'm good enough, like they'll stay, right? Like if
Mm,
I am a good girl, if I do my homework, if I get all A's, like they will stay. So that's sort of where like that stay until tomorrow comes into effect. But then also a lot of it is like dealing with my mental health and I explore like the time that I was in the behavioral unit and then that sort of evolved into like stay until tomorrow, like just wait until tomorrow, like things will get better, you know, we need you here around. So it kind of is twofold.
mm. Who would you say this book is for?
I feel like at the beginning it was for me. I really had no intention of doing anything with it necessarily, but I think it's for everyone who, has felt unheard, who has come forward about abuse and been like invalidated, or anyone that's knows someone or has gone through a hard time. I feel like it's really for everyone. And if my book can help anyone like in the slightest bit, like I've done my job.
Mm. And one thing too, Megan, that you brought into your book of poetries is just that sense of vulnerability. How describe the process of being able to kind of lower that shield a bit and being able to be okay writing about your vulnerability?
Oh yeah, that was certainly really difficult because it does get like just really deep into a lot of different topics. I think the way that this house was received, I think gave me the courage to continue talking about the hard subjects. And I have been like going to a lot of different like poetry events, and like I said, like this is all kind of new to me, this poetry world. So to see others like open up and be vulnerable and get that acceptance from the audience, and I just know that like, I'm just going to put it out there, like this is, my truth, this is, and hopefully it will be received well.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. What advice would you give other folks that are that are a little bit afraid or shy to show some vulnerability in their work?
The person has to sort of be open to exploring that aspect of themselves. Like I wouldn't push it if it's something that makes you really uncomfortable. But how I did a lot of my poetry is I would write a poem and like sit in it and really reflect in it and like take the time to sort of dissect it and that experience individually. So I think that really helped me kind of become more vulnerable and like accept it a little bit more. So I think it's sort of finding whatever that like you would need in particular to kind of like you said, like bring the shield down.
Mm. Was there a point too where you're writing something and you kind of self-edited yourself saying, this is a little too much right now? Have you been in the position where you're like, I'm not
Yeah.
publishing this poem? Like,
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, for sure. There is a lot of different lines where like I just wrote it and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. Like, what's gonna happen? But I think a lot of like I do discuss like the paper paintings and paper clothes a lot, which seems to sort of like hit people a certain way or but yeah, I feel like I didn't edit it too much as far as like changing words and maybe not being so intense.
mm.
But
And like you mentioned too in your book, you like in the acknowledgments, like thanking Samantha Colber of
yeah,
Rootstock, and she loves poets. She's always had a
yeah,
good. She's always been able to really like highlight poetry and how important poetry is to New England, authors. And so, what have you seen? What have you learned from other poets since you published your book?
um that I really need to edit my poems a little bit more. I do have some errors, but no, her team has been really great and teaching me a lot of different things and like how to sort of format the poems, how to word things, because sometimes like I'll go almost like off on a tangent in my poems. I'm like, I know what I'm talking about because it's about me, but sometimes like I'll use like you throughout a whole poem. So it's like being able to put it in a language that like a person who doesn't know the situation will be able to understand. Does that make sense? Like I feel
Hmm.
like it's just mainly grammar probably, but I think definitely like going to different poetry nights and like hearing how people actually read their poems and sort of the way that they do it and like their tone and their approach to their work has been really awesome to see, and sort of trying to like take bits and pieces because I feel like for me in particular, like the way that you read it out loud, like you can emphasize certain words or that sort of thing. So I think kind of mastering that craft.
Hmm. Was there any responses to your poetry that surprised you?
Um, no, not really. I mean, I've had like a ton of like pretty positive reviews, and then I noticed that like on the male market. I don't always like hit it. um but I have gotten like some really like nice reviews of like, this poem, like, and I know like my poetry is not for everyone. So it has been really nice though to sort of like hear that in like a PC way, and just saying things like, I didn't understand or grasp this, but that's okay. Like, so I feel like it's been like really nice constructive criticism, or like just really like, thank you so much for writing this. Like, you've really helped me, and I relate to this poem, and it definitely is interesting to see the different poems people comment about, because like I have my favorite poems, of course. And so some of them like I wrote and I was like, I'll just put this one towards the end or something. But then like some people like really enjoy that. So it's interesting to see like which poems hit home for people.
Oh, so which poem surprised you that had such a reception?
My poem, Venus de Milo. I like that poem, but like from like what the reviewer had said, like she was just gushing over it. Like, if you want to know like who I am as a person, like read this poem. Like, I loved it so much. And like, it was just interesting to see that a poem that, is not my top 10 would be someone else's number one. It just kind of proves that like everyone relates to things differently.
Right. So then, what was your which one is your favorite then that you mentioned?
Um, I think Grieving in Silence was a big one for me. And then I did a poem called Boys Will Be Boys, and it's a compilation of things that men have said to me in online dating. And I think it's a really great poem, but I think it brings a lot of light to sort of the culture of our current state of being here. So I like that it's sort of like, it's like it shows like treatment towards women and like what people say behind a computer typewriter screen. So that one was really interesting to write.
Hmm. And so, and as you mentioned too, the book is out with Rootstock Publishing.
Hmm.
It came out April 4th.
Yes.
Um, so, Megan, what's next?
I'm actually halfway done my second book.
Wow. Okay.
I'm about 45 pages into book number 2. It's called Good Morning Monsters, and it's similar to Stay Until Tomorrow, but it's a lot darker, and I say it's a little more unhinged. I think
Mm,
the first book kind of gave me that confidence to really open up, and then now this next book is like sort of like gloves are off kind of vibe.
wow. Okay.
And the
Okay.
poems in this next book are much longer. So I think that was different. I've sort of explored like my art of storytelling, and like I have some poems that are like 5 pages. So I think it will be different and interesting.
And so Megan, if people want to read Stay Until Tomorrow, where's the best place they can go to find a copy?
I mean, it's on Amazon, it's on barnesandnoble.com online. In New Hampshire, in particular, there are Read More Book and Brews in Portsmouth, and Pickwick's Mercantile in Portsmouth are both selling it. And then in Salem, New Hampshire, I'm going to be having a book event at Barnes and Noble, and then from there they'll keep the book in stock at that location, which is really cool.
Oh, cool. Okay. If people want to learn more about your book, you have a website they could visit?
I do have my Instagram where I post a lot of stuff.
Okay.
It's MAPW underscore New Hampshire Poetry.
Okay. Cool.
Just my,
Excellent.
you know, all
Right.
those. There's a lot of letters, so I can only do the initials.
Yes, Meghan A. Patricia Wentworth.
Yeah, it's a
Yes.
mouthful.
Yeah. See,
Yeah,
acclaimed New England poet. So
yeah.
All right. Well, listen, Megan, you're gonna have to come back on when you have a was it called Good Morning Monsters? Is that what it
Good
was?
Morning Monsters. Yeah.
Okay. All right. See? Not a children's book, even though it sounds like one.
Not, no, not a children's book. No,
Definitely not a children's book.
definitely not.
All right. Thank you so much, Megan. I had a great time chatting with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
I put author and poet, right? Because basically it's I'm sure you right or just poet.
Yeah, yeah. I
I thought
feel both.
author and poet. Yeah.
Yeah,
See, all right. I thought so. See, yeah. Wentworth. I like this. That's like a solid name too, Wentworth. See.
yeah. And actually, well, on the book cover, yeah, my full name is Meghan A. Patricia Wentworth.
Oh, that's
That's
yeah.
that's a solid name right there.
That is a solid name. See, yeah. It was funny. My middle name is Clay, and I went to art